Mr. President, let me say first that I join with the distinguished senator from West Virginia in expressing concern about our water infrastructure and water issues. As many of us know, we have had terrific challenges in Flint, Michigan, with an entire water system being unable to be used because of lead poisoning and terrible decisions that were made primarily at the state level. I was very concerned when I speak about Mr. Pruitt's nomination that when asked by Senator Cardin if he believes there's any safe level of lead that can be taken into the human body, particularly a young person, he said that this is something he hasn't reviewed and doesn't know anything about. That's deeply concerning to me, that the person who would be heading the EPA would not know anything about lead poisoning and what that means, first of all, in a child's body where it's poison and affects their development throughout their life. And it is critically important for us in Michigan, and there are many, many places where there are serious water quality issues that need to be addressed, that we have someone who understands the science and the need for clean water rules and protecting our water so that any family, any community can have the confidence of turning on the faucet and knowing that there's going to be clean water coming out into their sink in their home. And very concerning to me that we have a nominee that indicated he really didn't know anything about this issue. So for that and a number of reasons, many, many reasons, I am joining with so many colleagues in opposing Scott Pruitt to be the next administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA Administrator is a very important position. And as I indicated, to those of us in Michigan, surrounded wide by the beauty of the Great Lakes, having the responsibility for protecting the Great Lakes, this is a very, very important position. After examining Mr. Pruitt's record on a broad range of issues, as well as his views about the agency for which he has been nominated to lead, I have significant concerns about the direction and the priorities the EPA would take if he becomes administrator. And this is not based on partisan politics, Mr. President. When George W. Bush was president, I joined 98 of my colleagues to vote to confirm Christy Todd Whitman to be EPA Administrator. 2 years later, I was among 87 other members of the Senate to vote to confirm Michael Levitt to succeed her at the EPA. But the facts are, the evidence is that Scott Pruitt does not have the requisite experience and track record to successfully lead an agency that plays such a critical role in protecting the health and the well-being of the American people, and certainly the people that I represent in the great state of Michigan. As I mentioned before, we are very, very familiar with the importance of clean water and the consequences of environmental mismanagement. And we need an EPA that will act quickly when there is a crisis like the one that happened in Flint that is unfortunately still going on. This was a man-made crisis inflicted by the state of Michigan's actions on a number of different levels that created a situation where the state would rather save $100 a day than treat the water for lead corrosion. $100 a day they wanted to save rather than treat the water to prevent children and families from being exposed to lead-tainted water. This was a state decision. And Mr. Pruitt has made it clear of his intention to defer as much as possible to states to states like Michigan, who didn't treat the water, then didn't tell the truth, and then covered it up, and still have not done, despite our acting, Congress and President together acting to support that community. The state still has not stepped up to meet their responsibilities, and people still, after more than 2 years, cannot turn on the faucet and have confidence that they're going to have clean water. And yet Mr. Pruitt says that the state ought to be the one making these decisions. While I firmly believe an effective EPA is one that works closely and often in concert with state and local communities, we must also be sure that we have leadership at the EPA that is willing and capable of providing the oversight necessary to ensure environmental and public health standards. We also need an EPA administrator that we can trust to protect and preserve our amazing Great Lakes. Critical to this objective is a grant program administered by the EPA called the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. I was very pleased to champion and help launch this in 2010 with strong support from the Obama administration. And this accelerates efforts to protect and restore the Great Lakes by providing grants to clean up contaminated areas, prevent and control invasive species, things like Asian carp, which we are constantly having to focus on to push back these fish from destroying our fisheries and boating operations and environments in the Great Lakes, to address harmful algae blooms and restore habitat to protect native species. Scott Pruitt's long record of opposing nearly all federal environmental programs raises serious questions to me about his commitment to the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and all of the efforts that we have worked on in a bipartisan, bicameral way to make sure that we are protecting 20% of the world's fresh water, with 30 million people's drinking water, and a huge economic engine called the Great Lakes. I always like to say, Mr. President, that Great Lakes are in our DNA, and that's very true for all of us who live in Michigan and certainly around the Great Lakes, because we understand that this great natural resource supports more than 1.5 million jobs and nearly $62 billion in wages tied to jobs and industries, and frankly, it reflects our wonderful quality of life in Michigan. I also have great concerns about Mr. Pruitt's long-running opposition to the landmark renewable fuel standard, which puts him at odds with the agency that administers the program. The President promised us a farmer-friendly EPA, and yet his nominee to lead the agency wants to dismantle one of the most successful economic drivers in rural America. Mr. Pruitt has repeatedly spoken out against the renewable fuel standard, calling the program flawed and unworkable. Mr. Pruitt, heading up EPA, coupled with former ExxonMobil executive Rex Tillerson at the State Department and oil refinery owner Carl Icahn advising the White House, may well mean the end of the RFS as we know it. And that's frankly bad news for biofuels producers in Michigan, bad news for Americans who care about creating economic growth and jobs in rural communities, bad news for small towns and communities throughout Michigan. Mr. Pruitt's record of siding with polluters over sound science puts him outside the mainstream of what we should expect from our EPA administrator. It is for these reasons that I intend to vote against his nomination and would urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
The senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, thank you. I also rise to oppose the nomination of Scott Pruitt as EPA Administrator. To summarize, and then I'll go into some detail, Virginians are pro-science people.